Welcome to your daily solo 401k webinar and Q&A session with my solo 401k, where we help you to stop overpaying taxes and start building real retirement wealth. Today's topic, can I roll my 401k into an LLC? Have you ever wondered if you can roll your old 401k into your LLC? Maybe to invest in real estate, crypto, or your own business? You are not alone. This is one of the most common questions we get from self-employed individuals every week. This is your chance to get answers. Use the chat to ask questions in today's topic or anything else. Chat them over now so that we can be sure to get to them all. Let's get started. Looks like we already have some questions chatted over. Got one here from Steve Miller. Looks like he's trying to make contributions to a solo 401k, and he's using Fidelity investments for the brokerage accounts. He wants to make those contributions electronically, and that is an option. Let me send over a link that provides instructions on how to do that. Essentially, you're going to link your business bank account to the brokerage accounts. So it's going to be started on your bank side. And I just shared a link, and within that link, there's another link to Fidelity instructions where you're going to have to enter your Fidelity brokerage account routing number and account number on your bank side so that the funds flow directly from the bank account to the solo brokerage account for those contributions. So it's called ACH. So the funds will flow from the business bank account to the respective Fidelity solo 401k brokerage accounts, such as the pre-tax solo 401k, Roth solo 401k, and voluntary after-tax solo 401k brokerage accounts. Some good question. So if we have some other questions here. Got a question here from Tony. I'm a licensed real estate broker. I have a solo 401k trust. My solo 401k owns, controls its own LLC. I'm interested in the trust purchase in real estate by a foreclosure, auction, bank, or county tax foreclosure. Plan B to transfer money from my 401k to LLC bank, obtain a cashier's check for the deposit, and then again, for remainder of the funds, do I win the auction? So that's certainly allowed. Give me a moment here. Let me see if I can check our volume here. I'm sorry you're hearing an echo. Give me a moment here. We may have to just work with it today. I'm actually out in the field today. So I'm off site, and that could be part of the process. So, yes, you can certainly invest a solo 401k in an LLC if you're investing in real estate, and we're going to be covering that in today's topic. So, the investment in that real estate will be made in the name of the LLC, so you can certainly obtain a cashier's check from that LLC bank account for making that real estate investment at auction. If your offer gets accepted, title to that property will be taken in the name of the LLC, not the solo 401k, because the solo 401k will invest in an LLC, whereby the solo 401k is the sole member. And therefore, the investment is made through the LLC, not the solo 401k plan. So good question. Give me a moment here. Let's take a look at the next question here. Looks like Tony Zito is confirming that he does not hear an echo, so that's good. He or she, excuse me. Um, okay, thanks for confirming the echo was on your side. All right, let's continue. Go ahead and continue to chat over your questions during the live session, and we'll answer those questions as they come in. Again, today's topic is, can I roll my 401k into an LLC? So why do people ask this question? Well, many self-employed individuals want to use their 401k to invest in real estate, crypto, or private equity. While these types of investments can be made through a solo 401k directly, some clients like to make the investment through an LLC instead of the solo 401k. However, you have to follow certain steps to make sure that it doesn't result in a taxable distribution. So you could not just transfer a former employer plan or an IRA, for example, to an LLC. If you do that, that's going to be considered a distribution because an LLC is not a retirement plan, it's an entity, it's a business entity. And also, the IRS has very strict regulations when it comes to investing retirement funds, whether an IRA or solo 401k and alternative investments. And you want to make sure you follow certain regulations. So we're going to cover all this in today's webinar. Some of the things we're going to talk about is when you want to transfer funds, such as an IRA and or former employer plan to a solo 401k. That needs to be done in a compliance fashion so it doesn't trigger taxes. Obviously, in order to open a solo 401k, you have to first be eligible. Who qualifies for a solo 401k? Well, a solo 401k is for owner-only businesses where the business does not employ any non-owner full-time W-2 employees. There's an exception for your spouse. So your spouse can participate in your solo 401k plan if he or she is also self-employed. But if you employ any W-2 employees who are not owners and who work 1,000 hours or more, you would not qualify to open a solo 401k plan. And you have to treat that requirement across all of your self-employed businesses or any business that you own. So if you own other businesses that employ full-time W-2 employees, and you have a business where it's just you or you and your spouse, you still would not qualify for a solo 401k plan because your other business or businesses employ full-time W-2 employees. So be mindful of that. But if you are eligible to open a solo 401k plan, then once the plan has been opened, then you can transfer the IRA or the former employer plan directly to the solo 401k plan. Once that solo 401k plan has been funded, whether by transferring an IRA or former employer plan or by making annual contributions, you can then start investing, including investing it in a single member LLC, where the LLC only has one member, that being the solo 401k plan. Now, it's important to note that in investing in alternative investments, whether it's real estate, cryptocurrency, private equity, and so forth, you're not required to use an LLC. Instead, you can make that investment directly to the solo 401k plan. But if you're dead set on using an LLC to place your investments, then make sure you structure that LLC correctly to avoid prohibited transactions. So one, it cannot be an existing LLC. So you have to form a brand new LLC if you want to invest your solo 401k in that LLC. The solo 401k will be the only member. So that's why it's referred to as a single member LLC, and therefore it's a disregarded entity. Disregarded means that the LLC is typically not subject to having to file a federal tax return because it's a single member LLC, the single member being the solo 401k plan. Once that LLC has been structured, then you'll want to set up a bank account in the name of the LLC. When you set up that bank account, you'll go to the bank and provide the articles of organization for the LLC along with the employer identification number for the LLC. So you do not use the EIN number for the solo 401k. The solo 401k has its own EIN number. Now, it's important to note that the LLC we're referring to is not a business. In other words, you're not forming this LLC to fund the business. You're forming it because you want to make passive investments through the LLC, which is owned by the solo 401k plan. You're not allowed to utilize a solo 401k plan to fund your own business. So you can't say, well, I'm going to set up an LLC, I'm going to use my solo 401k to fund that LLC, and I'm going to operate a business. No, that's prohibited. You're not allowed to do that whether it's an IRA or a solo 401k. The whole purpose of funding that LLC through the solo 401k is for making passive investments in real estate, cryptocurrency, private equity, and so forth. Promissory notes. It's another popular investment. And again, you don't have to utilize an LLC to make solo 401k investments. 99% of our clients invest their solo 401k directly in these alternative investments. They generally do not use an LLC. Once that LLC has been funded with funds from the solo 401k bank account, so funds would be wired from the solo 401k bank account directly to that LLC, where the solo 401k is the sole member. Now you would make investments going forward through the LLC. And just like you have rules that apply when making investments through a solo 401k, same is the case when you make investments through an LLC that's funded by your solo 401k. In other words, the regulations don't change. And this means that you have to be aware of prohibited transactions. For example, if you invest that LLC funded by your solo 401k in physical real estate, title to that property will be in the name of the LLC. You cannot have that LLC purchase real estate that you personally own or your business personally owns or other disqualified parties such as your spouse, children, or parents own. That's known as a sell and exchange between the plan and disqualified party, in this case, the LLC. That's prohibited. So in short, setting up an LLC funded by your solo 401k is now meant to circumvent the solo 401k prohibited transaction regulations. Okay, let's pause here. Looks like we've got some more questions here. We've got a question from Tony here. I want to purchase a property that is listed on the MLS. As a licensed broker, I can access the property on my own research. I believe I cannot be the broker on record, even without compensation. Is this true? I am in the clear if I would hire an attorney to do the offer, work through the attorney for negotiations, then close. The attorney would be paid from the trust LLC. The truth is to hire another agent to represent me. That's a good question, and we get this question quite a bit. And there's no black and white answer, unfortunately, to this question. The key here is that you do not get compensated for performing managerial services for that LLC. So in your situation, if you are looking to invest in a property through the LLC, which is funded by your solo 401k plan, number one, the key is to not get compensated because you will be personally benefiting from that investment if you were to receive a commission. However, you could make the decision to be the broker of that transaction, provided you don't get compensated. The reason being is that you're not being compensated, so you're not personally benefiting, That's number one. Number two, as the trustee of the solo 401k plan, it is your responsibility to look after the assets of the plan. So you could say here that you're looking after the assets of the plan by serving as the agent broker on that property. Just don't get compensated. Now, if you are buying a large number of properties through the solo 401k or the LLC, and you're the broker of record, it may not make sense for you to do that because you can probably use your time serving other clients so that you get compensated. But the key here is that you do not get compensated for performing that type of service for the LLC or your solo 401k if you make the investment to the solo 401k instead. Hopefully that answers your question. But again, the key is not to get compensated. Now, you cannot perform sweat equity type of work on your property once it's been purchased by the LLC or the solo 401k. Sweat equity work would be painting the house, fixing the roof apartment, that type of sweat equity work. The work that you're talking about here can fall under managerial type of services. Okay, let's get a question here from Phil. Again, if this information is helping you feel more confident about your future, please take 1 second to like and subscribe. It tells the platform this content is valuable, which helps other solopreneurs like you to find it. Subscribing guarantees you get notifications of all of our crucial content that we deliver every day to help you secure your retirement. We've got a question here from Phil. Take a look at that. If the property is bought with Roth and pre-tax 401k with the 60-40 split, should the tenant deposit the Roth or pre-tax account? If deposited to the Roth, then we will need to transfer 40% to the pre-tax account. Will this create a problem with the IRS audit to sell the 401k? Great question, and we get this question posed quite a bit. So from a investment perspective, and since we are talking about an LLC, and today's topic is, can I roll my 401k into an LLC? One solution here may be to set up an LLC where the solo 401k is the sole member of that LLC. And that would be where you would invest both the pre-tax solo 401k and the Roth solo 401k funds in that LLC. It'll still be deemed a single member LLC because it's just a solo 401k that holds both pre-tax and Roth funds that would be invested in that LLC. And then you would make the investment through the LLC. And then as the rental checks come in, they would flow to the LLC bank account. And you could continue to make the investments through that LLC and leave the rental income in that LLC, or you can send it back to the solo 401k and you can divvy it up from that LLC bank account to the Roth solo 401k holding account and the pre-tax solo 401k holding account. Now, again, you're not required to use an LLC for investing in real estate. So another option regarding the question here is that, yes, you can go ahead and deposit the full rental check to the pre-tax solo 401k or the Roth solo 401k, and then make sure to move over the applicable percentage within those solo 401k bank or brokerage accounts internally so that the appropriate funds flow over to the Roth solo 401k. You want to move over any earnings that have been accrued while those funds are in that holding account. But no, it's not going to cause any IRS red flags as long as you ultimately deposit the applicable funds to the pre-tax and or the Roth solo 401k bucket along with any interest that may accrue while in that money market account. And you typically want to do that right away or at least monthly, so that way you have little interest to move over. All right, great question. I mean, the another option is to just have the rental check be split up where 40% goes over to the Roth and the 60% goes directly to the pre-tax, but that might make it tough on you where you have to collect 2 rental checks from the tenant. And that's not an ideal solution. The first 2 options there are probably more ideal and the 2 that we see most commonly utilized. Okay, so let's continue here and then we'll take a look at some more questions. Go ahead and keep typing over your questions and we'll get to them during the live chat here. I don't see any other questions at the moment. So the right way versus the wrong way. So we've already touched on this. So if you utilize an LLC to invest in alternative investments like real estate, cryptocurrency, promissory notes, and so forth, the right way of doing it is, if you decide to use an LLC, is to make sure that the LLC is being set up for the first time, that you set up a bank account for the LLC, which will be opened in the name of the LLC using the articles of organization along with the EIN number for the LLC. Then you want to make sure that you fund that LLC with funds from the solo 401k. So once you transfer IRAs and or former employer plans to that solo 401k, you would then wire the funds from the solo 401k to that LLC bank account, and then you would make the investments through that LLC, which is funded by the solo 401k. In other words, the wrong way is to transfer an IRA or a former employer plan directly to that LLC. It first needs to be transferred to the solo 401k. If you do it the wrong way, which is transferring the IRA or the former employer plan directly to that LLC bank account, that's going to be deemed a taxable distribution, which you do not want, obviously. That's the wrong way of doing it. Okay, we've touched on prohibited transactions. So again, you can't use solo 401k funds or LLC funds where you've got an LLC that have invested, excuse me, where you have a solo 401k that invested in the LLC. You still have to follow the prohibited transaction regulations, so you cannot use those funds for personal use. Those have to be used strictly for making solo 401k investments. So you can't turn around and loan funds from that LLC to your relatives, such as yourself, your spouse, children, parents. Now you can borrow from the solo 401k through a solo 401k participant loan, but that's different than doing it through an LLC. When you borrow from your own solo 401k, you can borrow 50% of the balance, not to exceed $50,000. You have to pay it back monthly or quarterly. It's typically a 5-year loan term with fixed payments consisting of principal and interest. If you borrow from the plan and you want to use those proceeds towards the purchase of your primary residence, the loan period can be increased from 5 years to 15 or 30 years. So a tip when making investments through the solo 401k or an LLC that's funded by your solo 401k is to make sure those transactions are done at arm's length. In other words, you can't personally benefit from that LLC investment or the solo 401k investment if you decide to do it through the solo 401k. For example, if you invest in real estate through that LLC or the solo 401k, you can now receive a commission for that investment if you act as the agent or the broker, because you will be personally benefiting of the result of your solo 401k or that LLC making that investment. Looks like we got another question here from Phil. Where where should the tenant's secure money be deposited since it's technically the tenant's money? Looks like you're referring to the security deposit. So if you're collecting security deposit from that tenant, that's technically a payment. So you're going to want to make sure you hold that in the solo 401k plan because it's a security deposit. You can't hold that security deposit in your personal bank account, excuse me, in your personal bank account or your business bank accounts because it's the solo 401k that made that investment, and therefore that investment is owned by the solo 401k plan. So that security deposit would be held in the solo 401k plan. Good question. Okay, let's see here. See if looks like we don't have any other questions at the moment. Go ahead and continue to type those over. Here's a real example of investing in a LLC where the solo 401k is the sole member in real estate. So the LLC would buy the property. So title to that property would be taken in the name of the LLC, not the solo 401k. And then the rental checks would all flow to that solo 401k bank account. Excuse me, to the LLC bank account, not the solo 401k bank account. Back it up here when that investment is made in the property, funds will flow from the LLC bank account to the title company for that purchase. Now, as far as expenses like property taxes, those need to be paid with funds from the LLC. Because again, we were talking here about a solo 401k that invests in an LLC. If the solo 401k invests in real estate directly, then the property taxes would be paid with funds directly from the solo 401k. Okay, so that's an example there. So it looks like we've come to the end of our webinar today. So that's it for today's session. Thank you so much for investing your time with us. Your time is valuable and your retirement future is worth it. If you haven't yet, please like and subscribe so we can keep building this community. We'll be back here tomorrow with more crucial content to help you secure your retirement. Have a great rest of the day.